Every ultimate experience Ireland has to offer is always within reach with a 182 BMW. The ultimate bowl of chowder, seasoned with Atlantic salt air, the ultimate swim spot, even the ultimate scenic shortcut that happily takes way, way longer. Experience the ultimate with a 24-hour test drive from your local BMW retailer, because owning your new BMW is always within reach. Visit bmw182.ie.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily represent those of any organization, including One Generation Away.
The freedom of a people to choose its leaders is the root of liberty.
Keep alive this experiment in liberty.
Liberty, in case you've forgotten, is the soul's right to breathe.
Government should be very minimal in protecting liberty.
Peace cannot be purchased at the cost of liberty.
The sturdy ground of liberty.
Liberty once lost is lost forever.
Fight for their liberty and for our security.
Guarantees individual liberty.
This great republic, born alone in liberty.
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 Liberty. Liberty.
Just how much do you want liberty?
This is Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
A production of LibertyNation.com.
Cutting through the double talk, taking on the topics, going after what the politicians really mean, and making it all clear. For your freedom and your liberty. Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
So it finally leaked, the Inspector General report on the Hillary Clinton email scandal. And it's not a pretty picture for Barack Obama. Welcome back into Liberty Nation Radio, a production of LibertyNation.com, and in a moment, we'll be joined by the great Victor Davis Hanson, syndicated columnist supreme, to analyze the long-awaited report by the Inspector General and what it might portend for Justice Department and FBI officials from the Obama administration. What did Obama know, and when did he know it? In Say What, the Dean of Law Professors, Alan Dershowitz, weighs in on what the IG report proves, while Bill Clinton begins a book tour about his new novel, but is boxed in with questions about impeachment and Monica Lewinsky. We'll welcome in Shak Hill, the conservative candidate mounting a serious challenge to the establishment incumbent Barbara Comstock in the heavily targeted Virginia 10th District. And in Talkin' Liberty, LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor Scott Cosenza discusses the case of the gay wedding cake. We start by welcoming in the brilliant columnist and historian Victor Davis Hanson, who's been following and studying the fine print on the Mueller investigation and now the Inspector General report on the Hillary Clinton email scandals, details of which leaked out this week. Mr. Hanson, welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio. The IG report is leaking out, the Inspector General report, and the full report will be out one of these days. We've been saying that for a long time now, but I think a lot of people don't understand about how the Inspector General works. His name is Michael Horowitz. He's the equivalent to, let's say, a police department's internal affairs division or the ombudsman at a newspaper. They operate independently and do investigations of Justice Department internal operations. Now, couldn't we just have assigned the IG to investigate what Mueller was hired to spend millions of dollars and who knows how much time investigating?
I think we could have, and we've done that before. I mean, when John Brennan said that he did not lie to the Senate staffers in 2014 when he was accused of using the CIA to monitor Dianne Feinstein's staff, the CIA Inspector General came out and said, no, Mr. Director, you did do that. And then he confessed that he did, and he apologized, and the Washington Post even called for his resignation. When people alleged that Devin Nunes had been leaking, and he was referred to the ethics committee, then the Inspector General of the House went and looked at him and said, no, he did not leak. That was a politicized complaint, and so then he was exonerated. And so we have IGs. In fact, they've been very prominent lately, and they're in all of these different branches of government, and they've got a pretty good reputation. But in this case, people there was a hysteria. We've got to remember what the hysteria was. Donald Trump was not supposed to win. The New York Times said he had a 3% chance on election. He won. That shocked people, and they were angry, and they tried to find a reason, and Hillary Clinton stepped up and did not tell people about the Steele dossier and how that was birthed. And so the proper narrative that she sat on a lead and did not campaign in the purple swing states where the election would be decided in the Midwest. Instead, she wasted her effort trying to get a huge margin in places like Arizona and Georgia, which she couldn't win. That was too untenable, so they came up with this: the Russians stole the elections and gave it to Trump. And in that media hysteria, in a moment of, I guess, uncertainty, Jeff Sessions recused himself. And then Rod Rosenstein, nobody even knew who he was, but he was actually an Obama holdover, knee-deep in the email scandal, the Uranium One scandal, the FISA court request. So he was compromised, but yet he picked his friend Robert Mueller. And that's where the genesis of this whole problem started. And once Robert Mueller was there, the Republicans really couldn't remove him, neither could Trump, because of the downfall before the midterm election.
What they did, in essence, was hire a former FBI director who presumably is very loyal to the agency and cares about its image, to investigate the FBI, which is why a lot of people don't understand why there wasn't someone totally independent from these institutions. But you mentioned the Steele dossier. Let's talk about that for a second. It's been called discredited. It's been called scurrilous. We know that it was funded by the Clinton campaign and or the Democratic National Committee, and that a lot of the accusations in there, or a lot of the information has been very deeply questioned. But do you think, from what you've seen and what you know, and you've studied this stuff, is there anything in the Steele dossier that's true?
There are things that, let me say, they're unverified. So the idea that Carter Page was a link to the Russians is false. There's no evidence he did anything wrong. He wasn't going to get a huge percentage of, I don't know what it was, $1 billion percentage of a Russian oil company. That was absurd. There's no verification of Trump's sexual ante in a hotel room. There's no. And so it's as if I wrote something about you or you wrote something about me, and I said it was untrue, you said it was untrue, but you would have to go out and, I mean, if I say that Donald Trump did X, how am I and it didn't happen, how am I going to prove that it didn't happen? And they did not tell the FISA court judge, A, this is unverified, B, the news accounts that we're using as substantiation are based on the dossier in circular fashion. 3, we got rid of Steele, he doesn't work for us, he's unreliable. And 4, Hillary Clinton paid for this. All that information was never given to a justice, and the reason it wasn't given is they know that no judge would have approved those warrants. Rod Rosenstein may or may not be a good man, we don't know, but he has relationships with the Uranium One investigation, the email investigation, the FISA court investigation, personal relationships with Mueller, personal relationships with Comey, and he's knee-deep in it, and so he needs to resign. And then the Inspector General and DOJ and other people can examine his behavior. I don't know whether it was good or bad. Nobody does. But you cannot have a person at the center controlling the investigation who is himself a witness to many of the things that went on.
Exactly. Well, we still don't know what triggered the FBI investigation of Trump, nor when it actually began. They claim late July 2016, but the activity in London surrounding the FBI informant Stephen Halper suggests it was far earlier. When, if ever, and how do you suspect we'll get answers to these central questions?
Well, we're starting to. The FBI said we didn't want to have an investigation. It was only when an Australian diplomat told us that in a bar somebody, Mr. Papadopoulos, leaked or drunk or rumored something about hacking with Russian connections. So then we got involved. But we know now that's not true, that prior to that they had already been inquiring or using an informant to set up a surveillance of the Trump campaign. So that's not true. And even if it were true, we know that Mr. Downer himself had been a large an agent that was responsible for the Australian government giving a lot of money to the Clinton Foundation. So the problem with all of these things that we've been discussing is that they're so multifaceted. So there's the uranium one, there's the email, there's the masking, the leaking, there's the FISA court, there's the informant.
Right. So it's so confusing.
Existential that if it were to all be true, what would it mean? It would be the biggest scandal in the history of the United States, and at the center of it would be ultimately Barack Obama, and that's the problem. That's Rod Rosenstein, that's Mueller, that's all of the media, Washington Post, New York Times. That is the question. They do not want to go any further because they suspect they might not like where it leads.
On that note, Mr. Hanson, many thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you.
Victor Davis Hanson. Hot from the factory, we've now produced gorgeous new bright red Liberty Nation baseball caps, proudly declaring that truth is making a comeback with the LN logo. All you need to do is go to the Liberty Nation YouTube channel, watch the vast array of content we offer there, from this show to our podcast, The Uprising, to LN TV. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment, and boom, you're eligible for a free LibertyNation.com Truth is Making a Comeback baseball cap. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment, and if we pick your name, we'll contact you and send you your free cap. Next up, we're joined by Shak Hill, the conservative mounting a serious challenge to GOP establishment incumbent Barbara Comstock in a district just outside the D.C. swamp.
Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
We believe that all men are entitled to blessings of liberty.
This is Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Well, all 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives will be up for grabs in November's midterm elections, but there's only a few that the Democrats are heavily targeting in their quest to pick up the 24 seats they'll need to gain control of the House. One of those targeted races is in the suburbs right next to Washington, D.C., Virginia's 10th district, where Republican Barbara Comstock has long been expected to get a serious challenge from the left. But now she's trying to fend off a growing challenge in the primary from her right, in the person of Shak Hill, decorated Air Force combat pilot and longtime entrepreneur and conservative pro-Trump activist. And with the primary set for this coming Tuesday, June 12th, Shak joins us now. And Shak, I wasn't sure what kind of chance you'd really have against the political machine that is Barbara Comstock. But it's now obvious she views you as a real threat, evidenced by the negative ad campaign she's unleashed against you, which is one of the most vicious I've seen in a long time. And I've seen a lot of them over the years. I'm not going to ask you to specifically refute the charges she makes, because I've looked into them and they're scurrilous and misleading. In fact, you've said you plan to sue her over this ad campaign. But I am going to ask you what the scorched earth tactics reveal, not just about the incumbent you're running against, Barbara Comstock, but the Republican establishment in general.
Well, Tim, it's always good to be with you and your listeners, but I tell you what it reveals. It reveals a failed way of governance and legislating. You see, Barbara Comstock does not want to talk about her record. She has an F from the Heritage Foundation, an F from Club for Growth, an F from Freedom Works, and she's a failed politician who has literally lied to us about wanting to repeal and replace Obamacare, because she actually voted last year not to repeal it. She's lied to us about strengthening the military when she voted for transgender surgeries in the military, forcing our taxpayer dollars to pay for it. So the only thing she can do is make up a whole bunch of accusations and innuendos about me, but we solve all of them by going to shakhill.com. Your listeners can easily see a link that's titled "The Truth About Sleazy Barbara's Lies." With about 10 minutes worth of research, you'll be able to figure out that she She is totally misrepresenting anything about herself, about me, and now about the Republican Party, because we need, just like you said, Tim, we need somebody who's going to support the president.
Well, you keep pointing out in your ads, as you have here, that Barbara Comstock does not support President Trump and has been given a grade of F by those major conservative organizations, and that, incredibly, even Maxine Waters is rated less liberal than her, according to one source, the Conservative Review, which puts out a scorecard. And yet the left says that Barbara Comstock is a mouthpiece for Donald Trump. Is Comstock, like other soft Republicans, caught between the rock of being too liberal for some and the hard place of being too conservative for others?
Well, she's caught between the rock of saying that she is going to do X and then she does Y. You see, when you get elected on a promise, and the first time anybody runs for public office, or certainly a different office, you're being elected on a promise. Well, now we know over all of these years exactly how Barbara has run. And to your point, the 10th Congressional District will be one of the most hotly contested districts, and we, the Republicans, will lose the seat if Barbara's our nominee. You see, Tim, she will not be able to run against a Democrat on the issues that Republicans run on and win with. So she won't be able to run on repealing Obamacare because she voted not to repeal it. She won't be able to run on keeping the federal government in check on its spending because she's voted to blow up all of the budgets and the spending. She won't be able to run on immigration because she's pro-DACA, she's anti-extreme vetting, and she funded sanctuary cities. So these are the issues that Republicans will need to run on in the 10th Congressional District in order to win and keep the seat red. And she won't be able to do that. And she's put her own self in between this rock and a hard place.
Now, you are running in a blue district. So let me play devil's advocate for a moment. Couldn't you make the case that Barbara Comstock, like other Republicans representing blue districts, is about the best that Republicans can do in a district that Trump lost by 10 points, that she has to legislate like a moderate in order to survive?
Well, Barbara Comstock is the only person in the 10th Congressional District that's a guaranteed loss for the seat. Yes, Trump did lose the district, but he lost at 52% because Hillary only got 52%. But, Tim, I don't think any of our listeners think that Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan are all of a sudden red states because Trump won there. So we can't presume that the district is now a blue state or a blue district because Hillary won by only garnishing 52% of the vote. Now, don't forget this, too. Hillary got 52% of the vote in the district where the sitting congressman was working against the president, or at least the candidate. I mean, people seem to forget that component, but here's what's going to happen. If the people want to have a constitutional conservative that supports the president, they will elect me because the district will not support a lefty loony, and the history of the voting in the district supports that.
Okay, Shak. Next Tuesday is the big day. You can go to shakhill.com to find out more about this, and make sure to get out and vote no matter who you intend to vote for. Shak, thanks so much for joining us.
Tim, it's always a pleasure. Shakhill.com. Thank you very much.
By the way, Shak has been endorsed by several conservative activists, including Sebastian Gorka from the Trump administration, Brent Bozell, longtime head of the Media Research Center, and now Richard Viguerie, who takes us all the way back to the days of Ronald Reagan. Next up, Say What, featuring the Dean of Law Professors Alan Dershowitz on what the IG report proves, while Bill Clinton begins a book tour and gets bombarded with questions about impeachment and Monica Lewinsky.
Liberty Nation with Tim Donner. This is Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Say what? Say what? Say what? One more time.
Say What, the portion of Liberty Nation Radio where we roll out some of the most wacky, astonishing, and damnable things uttered by politicians and the chattering class on the events and issues of the day. So a portion of the long-awaited, much-feared, and breathlessly anticipated Inspector General report on the Hillary Clinton email scandal finally leaked out this week. Shocking that the leak took this long. And it contains, among other things, the conclusion that former FBI Director James Comey was insubordinate, whatever that actually means, given that we don't have the full context, and that James Clapper and Andrew McCabe lied to investigators. And the Dean of Constitutional Law Professors, Alan Dershowitz, went on Fox News and said the leak proves a couple of things.
Somebody leaked it because they're afraid it's going to get changed, and they want people like us to see the original. And I hope that Hurwitz holds on to the original draft so he can be questioned about it. Second, it proves that we never needed a special counsel. We have the Inspector General. He is independent. He does a great job. All of this could have been done through the Justice Department. Regular lawyers. You don't need to bring in a multi-million-dollar group of people with a target on the back of specific individuals. That's not the way justice should operate.
But the left is using different facts or interpreting facts entirely differently than the right. To the left, Trump is obviously guilty of something, maybe collusion, maybe obstruction of justice, something. But Trump and most on the right sees Spygate. Chris Farrell, Director of Investigations for Judicial Watch, says the report from the Inspector General, who serves as a watchdog over the Justice Department, is damning about the Obama Justice Department and FBI.
What the report does, how it's useful or beneficial for everyone, is that it now documents the absolute state of meltdown, of crisis in the leadership of the FBI. You've got leaker Comey and lying McCabe, and they've been running the show for how long? How many investigations have they tanked? How many people have they politically targeted? They tried to steer a national election for president. This is a level of corruption that is so insidious and so corrosive. I don't think the FBI recovers from this.
If it does, it'll take a good long time. Meanwhile, one of the most hotly debated issues around the swamp these days is whether Rudy Giuliani is helping or hurting the cause of Donald Trump. Ever since he parachuted into the Trump legal team, the former New York City mayor and federal prosecutor has been all over the airwaves, decrying the Mueller special counsel investigation and calling for a quick end to it. This week, old Rudy grabbed the headlines again when he said the president is being set up.
He's innocent. He hasn't done anything wrong. The President of the United States, they are a group of 13 highly partisan Democrats that make up the Mueller team, excluding him, are trying very, very hard to frame him.
That's a serious charge. So you can see why many Trump supporters are cheering Rudy and many others are cringing. But Rudy didn't confine his controversial remarks to the special counsel investigation. He also made a remarkable statement about how desperate North Korea's Kim Jong-un is for the on-again, off-again summit with Trump, now on-again starting this coming Tuesday.
North Korea, after he canceled summit because they insulted the vice president, they insulted his national security advisor, and they also said they were going to go to nuclear war against us. They were going to defeat us in a nuclear war. We said, well, we're not going to have a summit under those circumstances. Well, Kim Jong-un got back on his hands and knees and begged for it.
The image of Kim Jong-un on his knees begging, maybe that's the only way the North Korean tyrant could relate to all the starving people in his country on their knees begging for food. Now, back at the ranch or the White House, the president had been planning to honor the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, but he canceled it after only a handful of players committed to attending, even though White House officials were saying that as of the end of last week, dozens planned to attend. Must have been before the hardcore leftists got to them. And the mayor of Philadelphia, Jim Kenney, ran out the same old tired screed and incorrect constitutional argument when asked whether Trump was asking for respect for the flag.
No, it's about respecting the First Amendment. It's also about understanding people's experiences in this country. When I hear the national anthem, I stand at attention, I cover my heart, but I'm a white man with privilege. And a lot of people in this country have not had the same privilege that I've had because of their race or because of their ethnicity, because of their gender. They put the First Amendment first for a reason, and the president wants to ignore the First Amendment and other amendments in the Constitution and force people to view things and act and speak the way he tells them to. And that's not what this country is about.
Wow. Do we have to tell the mayor of a major city this? The NFL anthem debate is not about the First Amendment. Free speech only pertains to public speech. The players are privately employed by NFL owners. Boy, am I getting tired of having to explain this. And to the mayor of Philadelphia, no less, he of white privilege. Well, it seemed like just yesterday that Bill Clinton got into all that trouble and ran into an impeachment buzzsaw in the House of Representatives after he lied under oath about that woman he did not have sex with, Monica Lewinsky. But it's now been 20 years since the impeachment, with Democrats anxious, chomping at the bit to return the favor with President Trump. So with he and Hillary having a whole lot more unexpected free time on their hands since November of 2016, the 42nd president has written a novel along with a veteran author, James Patterson, entitled The President is Missing. It may be a good book, but of course that's not what anxious TV interviewers were interested in discussing. When Clinton went on NBC and spoke about the Lewinsky affair for the first time in a long time, many thought his comments were insufficiently regretful. So he then went on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on CBS and said he supports the Me Too movement.
That was a very painful thing that happened 20 years ago, and I apologize to my family, to Monica Lewinsky and her family, to the American people. I meant it then, I meant it now. I've had to live with the consequences every day since. And I still believe this Me Too movement is long overdue, necessary, and should be supported. And we should all...
Don't you love the cheering from that virtue-signaling audience? I'm sure none of them have ever engaged in sexual harassment. So, now that Bill Clinton supports the Me Too movement designed to expose people like him, what's next? Barack Obama supporting white nationalists? Or maybe Donald Trump saying he wants a kinder, gentler nation? Hot from the factory, we've now produced gorgeous new bright red Liberty Nation baseball caps, proudly declaring that truth is making a comeback with the LN logo, of course. All you need to do is go to the Liberty Nation YouTube channel, watch any of the vast array of content we offer there, from this show to our podcast, The Uprising, to LN TV. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment, and you will then be eligible for a free LibertyNation.com Truth is Making a Comeback baseball cap. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment, and if we pick your name, we'll send you a free cap. Next up, the Supreme Court decides whether a Christian baker should be forced to create a gay wedding cake. Plus, some good news for those of you targeted by speed cameras.
Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
And now we have reached the portion of Liberty Nation Radio called Talkin' Liberty, where we examine various threats and promising developments regarding your individual liberty with our regular contributor, constitutional lawyer, and LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Tim.
Okay, the case of the gay wedding cake, Masterpiece Cake Shop. We discussed that ruling on LNTV this week. Tell us what the court said in this case and why, despite many seeing this as a major victory for religious liberty, in your view, it resolved nothing.
Tim, the baker in this case refused to bake a cake for a gay couple's wedding. Now, he asked the Supreme Court to declare his actions legal, which is to say that he's able to refuse the business of people that he doesn't want based on his own religious or freedom of expression grounds, whether it would be compelled speech or a right commensurate with his right to practice his religion freely, either one. But that's not what the Supreme Court said in this case. Even though he won his case against the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, what the Supreme Court found was that Colorado, in their dealings with the baker, were so inappropriate and exhibited such a hostility and bigotry towards him and his religion that that's why they ruled in his favor. They didn't say whether people who are similarly situated, which is to say another baker in Colorado or Washington or wherever, who wants to discriminate against business based on their religious preferences against homosexual weddings, whether they can do it. Because
so are they saying then that they're in effect saying this is an extreme case, don't take too much out of our ruling from this?
They only say you win and here's why you win, or you lose and here's why you lose. And in this case, they've said to the baker, you win and here's why you win. And the reason why you win is, now, there are some justices who we know from their opinions, like Justice Thomas and Justice Gorsuch, who would rule for the baker absent the malfeasance of the Colorado government. But we presume that Justice Kennedy, for instance, and Justice Kagan, for instance, may not do that. So we'll have to wait and see for a clean case to come up before the court where we have a craftsperson, whether it's a baker or a florist. There was a case that just was in the news this week, Tim, of calligraphy people in Phoenix who ran afoul of the local Phoenix anti-discrimination ordinance. They didn't want to use their art to create calligraphy invitations for a homosexual couple who wanted to get married. And they filed a complaint, and those people are now being, sort of drugged down by the government. So one of those cases is going to perk up, Tim. We're going to see a split in the circuits, and the Supreme Court, again, will have to take another case and address this issue.
Well, there is a case that advocates hope to get before the court. They haven't decided whether to take it yet, which is a case of a florist in the state of Washington who refused to do a floral arrangement for a gay wedding. Now, you say that...
Where in the world can they find another florist who might accept their custom, right?
Well,
such a hard road to hoe.
It is, and I think it's pretty evident that they're trying to set up test cases here, and they lost in the case of the gay wedding cake. But in Washington State, a florist has refused to do a floral arrangement for a gay wedding. The people who want this adjudicated by the Supreme Court are hoping that the court will accept it. Now, if they do, and they decide that one consistent with the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, won't that go some distance towards actually resolving the issue, given the two cases together?
The cases, we won't know until we look back through with the lens of history what it means. Presumably, with a clean case, the current case, Masterpiece Cake Shop, will be completely supplanted. I don't think that Masterpiece Cake Shop going forward will necessarily have any power. Certainly in a future case, they're likely to reference Masterpiece Cake Shop. But it's that new future case that will decide this issue, if it's a clean case. Now, we'll see.
Okay, let's talk about the Ohio Supreme Court doing something that I think motorists across the country are cheering. Now, again, we don't know how long the legs are on this decision, and it is a state Supreme Court decision, but they ruled that Ohio went too far with their speed cameras. And who among us has not been victimized by speed cameras, which many believe are unconstitutional, but the court hasn't really ruled that way over time, have they?
Well, what they have ruled in this instance is that New Miami, the name of this Ohio town, that's 1 square mile in dimension, and it is a speed trap town. It's known for just collecting the dough from people in nearby communities who roll through, have the unfortunate experience to have to pass through, and haven't been bitten recently by their unquenchable thirst. So they set up this automatic ATM for the government. Excuse me, not an ATM. It's a ticketing machine for those people who are driving through. And they...
it's an ATM for the police.
Yeah. Well, what they did was the way they wrote the tickets, they used hearsay evidence and convicted these people without the proper form. And Ohio, and there were enough challenges that were successful that they were ruled that they had to return over $3 million in tickets under the program. You think of all that money being sucked out. One little town in Ohio, Tim, all that money being sucked out of the, that's $3 million. It isn't going into any other economic endeavor to pay for this business. So, as you might imagine, the city fathers of New Miami fought pretty hard that judgment, and this past week the Ohio Supreme Court ruled that their fighting is now over. They're going to have to return that stolen money from the citizens they took it from. So I think it's a big win for liberty in the Buckeye State.
I note your use of the word stolen. Well, anyway, but
if a thug, if a highwayman is a highwayman, whether he's wearing a badge or not, right? I mean.
Well, this is one issue that they're going to fight hard against because the cost is very little for a speed camera, and the amount of revenue that it brings back turns it into a cash cow for the government wherever it's used. But let's move on to another issue which so many have associated with the overreach of government. Children's lemonade stands. And we've got a couple of stories out of Colorado. Denver police shutting down a child's lemonade stand for lack of permit. And then the company that produced it stepping up to defend the company Country Time. Stepping up to defend the child.
Denver police shut down Jennifer Knowles' son's lemonade stand that they started actually to benefit a charity in Colorado Springs called Charity International. And they picked a 5-year-old boy in Indonesia they wanted to help, and the Denver police didn't see it that way. They were near a festival-type event where vendors, I guess, were selling lemonade for $7 a glass, and they didn't like the competition, so they called the law in. And as we know so often, whether it is giant mega corporations and the federal law, or it's little business owners and local law, when the money talks, the thugs with the guns come in and shut down the liberty activists. And in this case, that was these young men who were selling lemonade for a few bucks. So, Country Time Lemonade, I think that perhaps they've seen, this wasn't in their press release, but maybe since the ACLU has fully retreated from advocating for liberty and is only advocating for narrative advancement, we maybe see the Country Time people really move in here. They're going to pay for fines up to $300, up to a limit of $60,000 in total this year, this summer, for kids around the country who are hassled by the authorities while doing a service to their community and getting into the entrepreneurial spirit. Most of these kids, Tim, they don't even have to pay for their inventory. It's a perfect business for them. Mom gives the lemons, for free usually.
That's true. Or in this case, Country Time contributes the mix to make the lemonade. Before we leave, a new law forcing Google to suspend political ads in the left-wing state of Washington.
Yeah, Tim, I thought this was interesting. I think you could look at it two ways: an infringement on free speech and a boon towards basically towards transparency. So Washington State has basically provided that if you're going to advertise, give political ads in Washington State, you need almost real-time production of transparency as to who paid for that ad. Because of the way these online advertising systems work, with presentations of different ads at different times to different people, it's very hard for them to enact this system just technologically and make it work. So Google has said, we cannot ensure compliance with the law, and because we can't be in compliance, we have to stop doing it.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Tim.
This program, Liberty Nation Radio, plus our own podcast from LibertyNation.com, The Uprising, are available to you on demand at LibertyNation.com. And, of course, from fine podcast providers everywhere, including the one which you utilize. So that is it for this week, but we'll be back at you next week. Same time, same station. Till then, this is Tim Donner saying stand up for liberty. And we'll see you next time on Liberty Nation.